Hey guys, this is my 5th battle report. I'm happy to say that this was actually an in-person battle. The first 4 reports I've done have all been on Universal Battle. I play a lot online because it's been hard to find opponents in my area. There just isn't a lot of interest in Kings of War yet, but I've been trying to stir up interest. I'm working on a couple of demo armies, and we'll hopefully be able to become a Pathfinder and host some events, game days, or just demo games and stuff, and get prizes and things like that going. In the meantime, I have been fairly active on some forums, and we have a local game store that has a forum where I just have been periodically posting things about Kings of War. I haven't had any response yet, but a couple of days ago I got an email from a guy who just moved to the area. He's in the military, and he said, "I play Kings of War, want to get a game in." And so I met up with him. We played a couple of games, and so this report is from Game 1. It will be my Brotherhood list against his Kingdoms of Men. Now, I was playing Kingdoms of Men for a while there and recently switched to the Brotherhood, and this will be my first time actually playing against Kingdoms of Men. So this is a good learning experience for me, and we had a fun time. So here is our deployment. The scenario that we're playing is Dominate, so the tower in the center of the table marks the center point, so anything within 12 inches of that, and it has to be entirely within 12 inches at the end of the game, will be counted as a scoring unit, and same thing for my opponent. He deploys a couple of hordes right at the center, so right off the bat, I don't know if that's good or bad for him, because they're a fairly cheap unit for such a large footprint. So getting them in the center takes up a lot of space, but we'll see how things unfold here. Going left to right, he's on the far side of the table. He's got 2 regiments of knights, and behind them an army standard bearer on a mount. He's got a troop of bowmen, and then he's got 2 hordes of polearms. So fairly cheap unit, but they've got crushing strength and a lot of attacks. However, they're defense 3, so they're easy to wound. Behind those 2 hordes is a mage, or a wizard on a horse, and the wizard has, I think, just about every spell. I think he wanted a lot of diversity and options with his wizard, so I think the wizard has Bane Chant, Fireball, Wind Blast, the whole 9 yards. And it also has the Inspiring Talisman, which is smart. He's got another troop of bowmen up on the hill, and then a general on Winged Beast, and then another regiment of knights. So the general had the Medallion of Life, I think it's called, that gives it regeneration, and the wizard has the Inspiring Talisman, but that's it for magic items. Everything else is just straight off the list. Excuse me. So going left to right on my forces, I've got a few less units than he does, so he really had an advantage in deployment. On the far left, I've got some lions there. They are representing my Order of the Abyssal Hunt, and they have the Potion of the Caterpillar, so that's why I put them behind the forest. And then I've got a Exemplar Redeemer with Onyx Ring, giving him regen 4+. I've got a regiment of spears. Then in the center of the table, the unpainted model is actually a large demigryph, and it's unfinished. He's supposed to have a rider on him as well. I'm using that to represent a Forsaken Beast with regen. On the right side, I've got another regiment of spears. I've got my Exemplar Forsaker, which is a flying monster character, and he's got ensorcelled armor, so defense 6. And then on the far right, I've got another regiment of knights. They are Order of Redemption. I haven't finished painting the riders yet, so that's why they're just horses. And then I actually didn't get it in the shot, but on the far right side, on the very edge of the table, I've got a regiment of the Order of Forsaken, which are the Flying Knights unit, and I'm representing them with a couple of Griffin models, again sticking with my theme. So that's deployment, and we'll see what happens turn 1. Alright, turn 1. The last few games that I've had, I have given my opponent the option to take the first turn even when I win the roll. It's worked out well for me, and so I try it again in this game. I won the roll and gave him first turn, I only have pictures at the end of each round instead of each turn, so I'll try to recap everything and try not to miss anything here. He moves his knights up pretty conservatively. I think he's waiting to see what I'm going to do there. He moves his bow troop up just a little bit and takes a couple shots at my spearmen while they were still on the hill. Does a few wounds, but doesn't waver them. He moves his hordes up, kind of positioning on either side of the castle, or the tower there, with his wizard behind them. On the hill, he just left his bow troop there. He's waiting for something to get into range to shoot. And he moved up with his knights and his general on Winged Beast. So on my side, left to right, I move my Abyssal Hunt into the forest there. I just picked up the terrain and set it on top of them. So since neither of his knight regiments have any magic items, if he charges me into the forest, he will be hindered, so -1 to hit and no thunderous charge. So I figure I can take a charge at least from one of the regiments doing that and then be able to hit back. So I stayed just inside of range of his far left regiment, but not the one next to them. I didn't want to take a double charge even though it was hindered, but I figured one charge I could take, so I'm kind of baiting him there. And if he doesn't charge me, then I'm just going to charge him anyway. So on to the right of them, I move up my Redeemer and my Spear Regiment and my Forsaken Beast. They're all kind of moving up towards the center of the table. On the right hand side, I decide to take my General, my Exemplar Forsaker, and go to the left side. There's more of a threat on that side. He's pretty evenly deployed, except that he's got 2 units of knights on the left and only 1 on the right with his general. So I decide I need a little more fighting power over on that side, and I move my general over. The spears move up, and my knights move up to just outside of range of his knights, so his general could charge me if he wanted to, but not the knights. And if his general charges me, then I'll be able to probably take him out, because again, I didn't get in the picture. You can just see the tip of the wing on the right side. I've moved my Forsaken regiment up and pivoted them to look left, and so they'll get a flank charge on anything he moves up, but he can't see me yet. So that's turn 1. So here we are in turn 2. Things start to happen here, and I'm sorry for the little bit of a blurry picture here, but to recap things, he goes first and charges my Abyssal Hunt in the forest, but again, they're hindered, and so no thunderous charge and -1 to hit, so he only ends up doing 1 wound. They're fine. His other knight regiment and the army standard bearer move up, and I charge him with my Redeemer. My goal here is just to inflict a wound and take away their thunderous charge so that they're disordered. I think I can stand a charge from the knights without the thunderous charge, and he's got regen 4+, so I'm also protecting the flank of the stuff I've moved up in the center, which is my Spear Regiment, my Forsaken Beast, and my General. I did a double charge with the Beast and the General on his horde, and I think I did 7 or 8 wounds. It was a pretty good hit, maybe even more. It might have been more like 11. But they've got, I think, a 1921 or 2022 nerve, so I'm not going to break them yet, but my General's got defense 6 and the Beast has regeneration, so I'm hoping I can take a charge back and then finish them off in my next turn. The spears I had moved at the double, and they're again just there to protect the flank of the Beast. It's probably not necessary or not the best move I could have made with my Redeemer in the face of those knights. They're blocked, so even if he happens to charge my Redeemer and kill him and get lucky on his rolls, he can only overrun d6 inches, so he's not going to make it to my flank anyway. But at any rate, that's what happened there. On the right-hand side, he just conservatively moved up his horde again. His archers took a couple pot shots at my Forsaken Regiment on the far right and didn't do any wounds. His general moves over to the center. I don't know if he's chasing after my general as well. his knights turn to the other side of the building, and instead of coming after my knights, he charges my spearmen, but botches the nerve check, and they hold. They hold. I don't even think they were wavered, so I think he only did 3 or 4 wounds because they have phalanx, and he didn't get to use his thunderous charge. So I'm happy with that. Since he moved over on that side of the building, then I take my redemption knights and put them behind the building where anything on that side is now in my front arc, and I'll be able to charge if my spears die. And I've also got my Forsaken Regiment, which we can finally see in the picture. A couple of griffins there. They are in position to be able to charge the knights on the flank as well. I think I even had him in position to charge the bows if for some reason I felt like that would be a better option. So that's the end of turn 2. And turn 3, on the left side there in the forest, I had countercharged him with my Abyssal Hunt, and I think I did 7 or 8 wounds. It was a good hit, but I didn't roll high enough to rout them, and they ended up countercharging, and he rolled well, did a ton of wounds, and I lost my units. So that hurts on that side. His knights countercharged my Redeemer, and because they only had because they didn't have Thunder's Charge, he only did a couple of wounds. I think I regened one of them, so he's only got 2 or 3 wounds on him. I decided to turn him around and go after the bow troop and just disorder them. I'm able to take him out in the center with his horde. His horde had countercharged my general, but the defense 6, even with his crushing strength, I think he only did 1 wound. So that's great. I charge him again with the general and my Forsaken Beast and do another 7 or 8 wounds and easily rout them, even with Inspiring nearby. So I turn the spears and the Forsaken Beast to face his oncoming knights. I turn my general to face the back of his other horde and his general. So I'm liking my position there. His knights charged my spears again, but he just botched the roll again, and they wound up just wavered. I actually probably would have preferred if they had died, because now they're in the way of my redemption knights. But I'll take it. I mean, they're alive, so they can keep on fighting, so that's good. So I just position my redemption knights more closely behind the spears. My Forsaken Regiment gets a flank charge on the knights, so double attacks, and they get their Thunder's Charge and are able to take them out. So that's a good win there, a good trade-off for points. However, I am now positioned to take a charge from the Horde and possibly the General, so that's probably the only combat that Forsaken Regiment's going to see. And that's turn 3. So here we are, turn 4. Things are starting to take a turn here, and he's outnumbering me with his units, and that's becoming difficult for me. On the left-hand side, he charges my spears with his Knight Regiment closest to the tower and takes them out. His other Knight Regiment has to maneuver around the forest a little bit, so they just move up. His bows take a few shots, but don't end up doing anything. And his wizard uses fireball and doesn't do much on my beast. He doesn't score a wound. So in my turn, I countercharge, or I don't countercharge him, but I charge him with my beast and a rear charge with my Redeemer. The Redeemer doesn't get to triple his attacks since he's an individual, but it's still adding some wounds, and I'm hoping to take them out. So I do 9 wounds. It's a good solid hit, but I don't make the nerve check, and they're not even wavered. So that's not good for me. He's outnumbering me over here, and it's going to be hard to deal with. Both regiments and knights on the left side of the board there have several wounds on them, so I feel like if I can get a solid hit on them again, that I can take them out, but I just don't have the units to do that at this point. On the right side, he double charges my Forsaken Regiment, the Griffins. The horde of polearms was probably enough to take them out on their own, but he really wants to make sure that they're gone, because otherwise he's sitting there with his flank exposed to my spears and my knights, and his rear exposed to my general. So I think it was a smart move to double charge them and just secure the routing them. He turns his polearms around to face the center, and he turns his general to face my spears. It's sort of the lesser of two evils, because by turning to face my spears, he gave my general his flank. So I charge him in the flank and do 5 wounds, and I think I even wavered him and got a lucky nerve roll. However, by not killing him, I'm now stuck there, and my flank is exposed to his polearms horde. 50 attacks, crushing strength 1, even with defense 6, that's a little bit too much for one model to stand up against. So that's not good for me, but my spears at least are not wavered anymore, and my knights are right behind them, ready to get in the fight as well. So this is actually turn 6. I think I was stating the rounds incorrectly before, but this is turn 6, potentially end of the game, and things continue to go against me here. I do manage to take out one of his regiments of knights on the left there, but he does a triple charge on my Redeemer and takes him out, and now my beast is just sitting there ready to get charged by several things. On the right side, again, my general had his flank exposed to the horde of polearms. That is just too many attacks at crushing strength 1 to stand up against, so he takes him out. The general, his general on Winged Beast was wavered, so he had just moved back a little bit, and we'll be ready to fight again next turn. My spears had charged the horde, and I think I had also charged the horde with my knights, but only did 7 wounds. I don't really remember what happened there. I would have expected more wounds. Those knights have 20 attacks, hitting on 3s and wounding on 2s. And then the spears have another 15 attacks. So I don't know if it was just a poor roll there. It's probably what happened, but I don't manage to even waver the the horde, which is not good for me, because now they're in the face of my knights. And he's got several units that he can move into the center of the board and get points for, whereas I have 2 things left on the table. I've got my beast and I've got my redemption knights. So does not bode well for me at the end of turn 6 here. I ask him if we can just play it out, because in case we go to turn 7, I want to see if I have some chance of taking out his knights with my beast and his horde with my knights, then at least it'll be a little bit closer game, and potentially maybe even a tie if I can get my units into the center, which I don't really have a way to do, but it'll be close. So we do roll it out and end up going to turn 7. But even though I'm able to take some more action, my knights survive against his horde of polearms, but countercharge and don't kill him, or even if they do kill him, they're going to take a charge from his general and his knights. So my Forsaken Beast, he ended up taking my beast out in turn 7. He charged them with the knights and the bowmen and his standard bearer, just triple charge again. The knights are unhindered, not disordered, so they get their thunder's charge, and it's too much for the beast to handle. So it was a good game. He pretty much tabled me. At the end of turn 7, he had killed the remaining 2 things. So being outnumbered like that with the number of units was rough in deployment, and I didn't have as much staying power on the board throughout the game, because every loss was just a big portion of my army. Excuse me. I will say that we were playing 1,500 points, and I'm not a huge fan of 1,500 points, or I should say I'm not a huge fan of this 1,500 point list that I made. I don't like the Spearman in this case, and I don't really like the Forsaken Beast in this case. I was really just using models that I had and throwing stuff together. What I would prefer to do is ditch the Spears and the Beast and take some recon troops, because I really need chaff in this list. The Knights, it's very important for them to get the charge, and it's just hard to do if I don't have chaff. Recon are awesome chaff. They have a speed 9 and are nimble. They've got defense 4, and they benefit from Valiant, which my other units give. So I think I would change that up if I were to do 1,500 points again in this case. My 2,000 point list has a couple of martyr hordes, villain recon troops for chaff. I don't have the beast, so it's just a different feel, and so I don't think I utilized everything very well. But it was close until the last couple of turns. I think I had the opportunity to do some things and probably could have moved things better, but he was a good opponent. It was fun to play him in this game, and we got a second game in right after this that I'll do another report for. But I had a lot of fun with it, even though I got tabled, and it's always great to play somebody in person to break up the online games as well. So I hope you enjoyed watching the report, and I'll have a second one up shortly.